Thank you all for joining me. I'm your host, Simply C, and I have Brad Dearth in the studio. Oh, there we go. Got some volume here in my earphones so I can hear. Now, Brad is an author, and he actually recently wrote a book, My Ambition to Survive. And it's actually about you at 7 years old. You were involved in a car accident, left some long-term marks, shall we say. I'll let you take it away from there.
Yeah, at the age of 7, I was involved in a car accident. It was October 2nd, 1982. My recollection before the car accident, I really do not remember anything at all. From what my mom has told me, just to backtrack a little bit and then get back to your point,
Mm-hmm.
is I grew up on an acre of land. It was a ranch style home. We had cornfields all around us. My best friend lived half a block down the street from me. Um, I did yard work. I did garden work outside. Really, really kind of set the mold of who I was. I was an outdoors person. I
Mm-hmm.
liked working in the yard and stuff like that. October 2nd, 1982. We'll get back to the original question. Mom, Sis, and I were on our way home from grocery shopping, and Mom was driving, and I was sitting behind her, and Sis was in the front passenger seat. And we were doing roughly 30, 35 miles per hour on this Saturday afternoon. I came from Columbus, Ohio, and at the time, the Ohio State football team was coming on the field. So Hang On Sloopy was on the radio, which is their fight song. We were driving along, hardly any traffic, and we go through an intersection, and Hang On Sloopy is abruptly comes to a halt by the sound of screeching metal and breaking glass. As the car spun violently, you could see pieces of glass and debris and blood as it floated through the air as the car kept spinning and spinning and spinning recklessly. Once it came to a complete stop in a heap of rubble is when chaos happened. Every square inch of the car had a piece of glass and blood embedded in it all throughout the car. My mom asked my sister to check on your brother, and she looked back and she said, he's on the floor and he's not moving. Mom went into high alert. Sister had a laceration on her forehead. Someone who witnessed the car accident came by, gave her a handkerchief, put it on the wound to stop the bleeding until the paramedics got there.
Mm-hmm.
Mom got out of the car. Mom's left hand bent the steering wheel due to the force of the impact.
Mm-hmm. So, do you know what you guys got hit with? Was it another oncoming car, a semi, a bus?
It was an oncoming car in a no turn lane and a red light,
Mm.
and I mean it's like an old Cadillac. The thing was huge,
Mm-hmm.
and this little tiny car we were in didn't have a chance.
Ah. Mm-hmm.
And so they hit the front left quarter panel. No, hardly any damage to their car. Destroyed our car.
Oh, of course.
Checked on me and she thought, oh, he's unconscious. He's got a bloody nose. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, a couple minutes later, an ambulance stopped. Paramedics assessed the scene, got me on a backboard, and they started the Glasgow Coma Scale, which is ranked from 3 to 15. 15 being you have the best outcome possible.
Mm-hmm.
3 being, well, you're pretty much dead. There's not much chance you have of living.
Mm-hmm.
I was a 3. I didn't have a pulse. I wasn't breathing. When they had me in the back of the ambulance and my mom was there, the guy asked, "What's his pulse?" Nothing was said. "What's his pulse?" Again, if he had one.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty much the unraveling of the car accident. The interesting thing is, it never broke the skin on my scalp.
Okay.
It was a depressed skull fracture, and what that
Mm-hmm.
means is, instead of breaking the skin and causing the force to be wider, it actually focuses that energy into the skull and sprays the brain with slivers of your cranium.
Ooh, all right then.
Yeah. So they had no idea about the condition of IBN. I ended up taking that ambulance, went to the local metropolitan hospital, which generally was for adults only, and quickly got me on life support. They had to stabilize me. They put a pressure gauge in the back of my head, so I wouldn't damage my brain with continuous swelling of the brain. I was stable, but I mean, it was very rocky, and this is when the long venture of the hospitalization starts.
All right. And that's actually kind of how you open your book, is kind of the introduction of the car accident and how it changed your life and your family's life, for that matter. Now, in the book, you actually kind of break up the stories with some explanation as different brain injuries, scales of things like that. Is that just to kind of help the reader understand what you're talking about?
Well, when I originally made this book, I was just going to say, this is my life.
Okay.
Digest it. And I started thinking about it, and I thought, there's so many brain injury sites out there that would probably really want to help someone like me. So I started scouting around. It took me 2 weeks, 2 hours a day to find this site, but it's www.traumaticbraininjury.com, where I had to go through 4 lawyers to get permission to use it, because it was not technically traumatic brain injury website. It was brain injury information only. They gave you the rundown of the likelihood of everything that you go through, but they didn't have an actual case. So that took probably about 6 weeks to get permission from them, because I had to go through and explain everything about the book that I was doing, and then finally they said, okay, you have our permission, go ahead and use it. But it very much, it fills in the blanks, because it talks about the different types of comas, it talks about the Glasgow scale, it talks about different types of head injuries, it talks about the severity of what you're going to be facing later on in life. And then actually towards the end, I have the mild version, which is kind of what I go through right now. But it gives you the definition of what kind of things I deal with on a daily basis.
And in the book as well, you talk about coming home from the hospital and things like that, and going through physical therapy, but not wanting to go through physical therapy because you could already walk on your own. You're pretty much self-taught, and in leaps and bounds, might I add. Now, throughout the book, you also say, this is my will. Nobody's going to break me. This is what I'm going to do.
Do not give up. Do not give in.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's my motto.
And now, how was that when you were that little and kind of had to, not necessarily go through physical therapy, but had to prove to these adults that you could do these things without their help?
It was kind of annoying. It was actually kind of annoying because I remember being taken to the children's hospital. And you walk in the door, you sit down in a chair, and they bring a gurney out, and you get to lay on the gurney, and then they take you back to PT, and they put a strap around your waist. And I'm like, I can walk, right? You just saw me walk. You just saw me get on the gurney. Now, and I can stand, because I proved that out in the waiting room also. Yeah. Well, and they'd have these 2 balance beams, rails, that you'd have to walk 10 feet down, and then 10 feet back. And I said, I can do it without the rails. I don't need the rails. And they're like, yeah, I know. And they'd have 4 steps that you'd have to climb. Go up 4 steps and come back down. And I told them, I said, I can do 2 at a time. I can do 2 at a time. And, well, sooner or later, the 3rd time I was there, which was the last time I was there, they said, okay, fine, do it your way. And I did it my way, but it was the thought in my mind from when I was in the hospital. Somehow I have recollection of this, and I don't know how, but the doctor, and I have this on all my presentations, be happy with what you have.
Mm-hmm.
Don't expect much from them. My motto now is do not give up, do not give in. I want to prove this doctor wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept, pushing that motto through life as I went forward. So,
Mm-hmm. Brad is in the studio with me, and he's here to talk about his book, Ambition to Survive. And we're going to get into a little bit more of the car accidents that kind of shaped your life and made you who you are today.
correct. I like I explained when I was in a metropolitan hospital, hooked up to life support, and had a pressure gauge installed on the back of my head. I ended up staying there for 5 days, and the doctors, my mom stayed in that waiting room the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Every 45 minutes she'd come in and see me for 15 minutes, but she would go out and she would wait, repeat the cycle. But at the end of the 5 days, they said he's stable,
Mm-hmm.
as stable as can be. What we're going to do is we're going to transport him via ambulance to Children's Hospital.
Okay.
Which meant I had to be transported ICU transport,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of tricky because you don't have, if any mistakes happen along the way,
Mm-hmm.
there's not much they can really do for it.
Okay.
It's a tricky procedure, but my mom followed, and we got to Children's Hospital,
Mm-hmm.
and the nurse greeted my mom at the door and said, "We have to take him off life support,"
Mm-hmm.
and I've been on it for 5 days. And because they didn't want me to get so used to life support that my mind automatically thinks that that's how you live.
Okay.
So what they weaned me off life support. Then they put me back on life support. And I stayed on life support for 5 days in an intensive care unit. And this is when the craniotomy happened. Through the whole procedure, they never said what percentage chance I had of living.
Mm-hmm.
Mom didn't ask.
Right.
It was hope and pray for the best and see what happens. So when they did the craniotomy, they cut from the front of one ear up and kind of followed my receding hairline to the other side of the ear, and they pulled the flap of skin down, letting the eyes kind of hover in their position. And they pulled the back of my cranium scalp back to where the pressure gauge was. They cut down the tops of both sides of where people usually part their hair at.
Okay.
And they cut across the front, and they opened it up like a convertible.
Yep.
Yeah. And the size of the hole is like a quarter.
Okay.
But when they opened it up, they were actually in shock because I had total loss of the left frontal lobe, which is your executive functioning.
Okay.
If you've noticed, I'm right-handed.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, I should be left-handed, but I'll get to that later. They ended up doing reconstructive brain surgery, trying to put my brain back the way it was before it was shredded with bone fragments. They had to pick out each and every bone fragment. They had to irrigate it all out, and then they had to close and fuse my skull together, and then use tape to hold the incision together, which is like freezer tape,
Okay.
which is extremely painful. But After the craniotomy, they took me off life support, and they, I was okay. I was on life support for 10 days. I was in a coma for 2 weeks. There's a show that I used to watch. They'd say "yeehaw" all the time.
Okay.
And my mom would turn that on for me when I was in my coma. And every now and then, when I'd hear the phrase, my eye would barely open a little bit and then close. And she knew that I was coming out of my coma, which was good. But I came out of my coma, and life was... I couldn't move. I've lost a third of my body weight. So if I weighed 90 pounds, I now weighed 60 pounds. I was skin and bone. And I was eating excessively, trying to gain weight back. All of a sudden, the eating stopped. And they took me to have an x-ray done. And they found that there was a hole in my stomach.
Oh.
So they had to do exploratory surgery on my stomach, and they fixed it. And they happened to notice I had a blood clot in my left hip. So I had 1 shot of heparin for 2 weeks. I had to lay flat on my back, not move, and which was torture. But when everything was done, and I was allowed to go home for Thanksgiving, I couldn't walk. And I had to be carried or wheelchaired. Got home. Mom put me in bed. I fell asleep. It felt good being in my own bed again. Mom too. And the next morning she woke up early and she went to check on me, and I was gone. And she went searching the house, this 80-foot ranch-style house. And she found me all the way over at the other end of the house, sitting on the floor, watching cartoons. I just got up and walked. And that was the criteria for going home, was he had to walk. And the next day I did. So
it was pure willpower.
It was being back in your original surroundings, your own bed and everything, and your own home. So, yeah.
And now, in the book, you mention kind of the whole accident and kind of growing up causing a little bit of a rift between you and your sister. Was it because she had to kind of more or less kind of take care of you, or was it just because it was just a different style of living?
You know, I feel bad about it. My mom feels bad about it. She was ignored for 2 years afterwards. Well, ignored would be a bad word. I got full attention, we'll put it that way. It's a nicer way of putting it. And, you know, that made a huge rift between my sister and I. I mean, we didn't hate each other. I mean, we loved each other like brother and sister. But, you know, I mean, I was the first one that, or she was the first one I smiled for. And, you know, when I was growing up as a baby, she loved to hold me and take care of me, and you know, she was a great sister. But you know, the car accident really, like the front cover, it shattered glass. I mean, it did so much damage to everything and everybody in the equation, unfortunately. And I feel bad about it. Sis was about ready to turn 16. She was going to get her driver's license. She didn't want to get it.
Right.
She didn't want to watch the movie of accidents and not wearing a seatbelt because she knows this firsthand.
Right.
So, you know, 2 years later, she ended up getting her driver's license. But they had to not show the video in order for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
it was the challenging thing for me after the car accident, going back to school.
Okay.
3 months to the day of the car accident, I went back to school
Mm-hmm.
way too soon.
Mm-hmm.
I should have been out probably the rest of the year,
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't done recovering. I mean, I just had, remember those 5 pieces of tape that were on
Mm-hmm.
my incision?
Right.
I just had those peeled off in the bathroom by my mom and my sis.
Mm-hmm.
They had to saturate them and peel them off the raw scar. It was horrifying. It was bad. But but I went back to school way too soon. I had a job stocking. I had the suspenders. I had
Mm-hmm.
a support stocking. I was bald. I had 2 black eyes. One eye was higher than the other eye by about a half an inch. Getting on the bus, it was just kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
where do you sit? and and you end up going all the way to the back of the bus and passing everybody by. And it was hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard for me when I got to school and got off the bus and my teacher's there and, Brad, I'll show you where everything is.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know where everything was in school. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I completely lost my memory. And it was good to some extent,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't. I ended up retaking the 2nd grade again
Mm-hmm.
because I just didn't feel like I learned enough at
Mm-hmm.
all.
Right.
So,
Mm-hmm. And now you kind of go through your teen years also in this book a little bit. And one of my kind of, dare I say, favorite stories is a lawnmower incident that you had in there. You wanted to mow the lawn, your acre of lawn that your parents had, and you couldn't figure out how to stop the lawnmower, so you ended up crashing it a little
yeah,
bit.
that was actually the first 6 months after the car accident.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I saw my dad out mowing the lawn. And I thought, man, that looks like fun.
Mm-hmm.
And he parked the mower next to the garage, and he was out back. And I thought, I'll just fire it up
Mm-hmm.
and drive it around, impress him.
Mm-hmm.
Fired it up, slowly eased off the brake pedal, and the mower jumped because it was in 3rd gear. Did not have the strength to turn the wheel,
Mm-hmm.
and slam, hit this, something like 16-inch wide tree with this metal lawnmower and put this dent in the front of it. But the back tires were spinning, and Dad pulled me off of it. But I'm glad the tree was there, else I'd be going through brush.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one experience. The other experience was I'd see my dad bike
Mm-hmm.
ride. And I thought, well, that looks like fun.
Okay.
And I thought, well, my sister won't mind if I use her 12-speed. So I'm a little tiny kid, and I get up on top of it, and I start pedaling around the front yard, and this is real simple. And I hit the brakes, and the bike stops, and then the bike drops, and I'm still on the bike, and I hit the ground. And it was just kind of like, okay, put your feet down next time. I got it.
Mm-hmm.
That showed my motivation. My motivation was to get back to what I did in the past that I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's when I started mowing lawns for neighbors, started making money.
Mm-hmm.
I had fun with it. I enjoyed it so much.
Now, in your book phrase throughout, don't give up, don't give in, what do you hope people can take away from this? I mean, besides some more knowledge about traumatic brain injury and then people that have disorders and things like that, is it more of kind of a hopeful book to give people, hey, go out there and do?
It's meant to be educational for one,
Mm-hmm.
but it's mostly meant to be inspirational.
Okay.
Something to motivate someone to say, hey, if I can dream it, or if I want to do it,
Mm-hmm.
I can do it. I just have to force myself to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this interview I'm having with you. The last week was torture with me because of anxiety, being overloaded, unsure of what's happening or what this is all about, and all new to me. But I refused to give up. Even when I couldn't find a door that was open, I still would not give up.
Right.
You know, it's, if you dream it, if you think about it, and if you want it, do it. There's nothing stopping you. The only thing that would stop you is if you needed someone's help and you didn't ask. And not asking would be your own fault. And you have to do the initiative to go forward.
Right. And now you mentioned a little earlier that you do presentations. So what does a regular presentation with you kind of look like? Does it talk about your story a little bit, about traumatic brain injury? What do you kind of go through with a presentation?
My presentation, I like to call it the 1, 2, 3 punch.
Okay.
Do a brief little 2 or 3 minutes of what was like before the car accident, and then you hit hard on the car accident, and then you kind of draw it out with how school was like thereafter, and then when the mental illness kicked in on top of the brain injury, how this was like. There's the second punch. And then how you struggled for so long, and then now look at yourself where you are at right now. Which is totally the opposite side of the coin. A lot of people who've known me for 3 to 5 years are never suspected the fact that I have traumatic brain injury or mental illness. They would never guess it, you know, because I portray myself as being quote unquote normal, whatever that is.
Nobody really has a good goal for what is normal.
Sorry to be slanderous about it, but yes.
No, that's fine. Don't worry. And now, was it always kind of your goal to write a book about yourself? I mean, almost kind of like an autobiography in a way.
It's an autobiography memoir. And when I say memoir, it's in so much detail that, I mean, you've read some of it. You probably felt like you were there with me with the details behind it. The story really pulls you in, and it's very hard to put down. I have 0 writing skills. I have 0 presentation skills. Can't even teach myself how to do things. Better yet, teach other people how to do things. I mean, all these skills are new to me. These have surfaced in the last 10 years.
Okay.
And I mean, I've been writing songs since the age of 15, but you know, that's different ballpark. But you know, the writing skill, the hardest thing was getting it started. And what I found was I took my hour-long presentation and I dictated it, and someone typed it out for me.
Okay.
I said, okay, here's the outline. Now let's start throwing events in all over the place. And I mean, it was long and tedious. It was very complicated. It was very challenging. You delete a lot of pages, you rewrite a lot of pages, but the finished product was quite the achievement. And I almost hit the delete button and didn't have it published because I don't know if I want this out there or not. You know, you do paint a target on your back when you do an autobiography about your life, memoir state. But as for the presentations, I was in a board and lodge facility at the time, and 2 times a year, student nurses would come by, and there'd be 5 or 6 of them, and that's about it.
Okay.
I remember one time, it was the 3rd week, and I laid my SPECT scan down by Amen Clinic, and I laid my CTs down, and she's like, oh boy. She didn't realize that there was another side of the equation besides just mental illness, but there's also this. And she said she talked to her teacher. This is when I got really nervous, because her teacher looked over my shoulder and you have 2 weeks to do a presentation, 45 minutes long. Oh boy. But I put together a outline, and I actually did a timeline and just started marking off where all the spots were, and then just started ballooning the events further. But it was when I was just about ready to give up on presentations after my 3rd year of doing them.
Okay.
one of the student nurses came up to me. I mean, I answered their questions, and I said, go look at my treasure chest, all the stuff I brought downstairs, that belongs to me. Go look at it. And I stood there, and I stared at the opposite side of the room. I was just overrun by feelings with this surge of energy, and it felt so good, but it felt like the word wasn't getting out.
Okay.
Because you do your presentation and get a pat on the back. Oh, good job. And okay. But that's when they came up to me. One patted me on the back, one patted me on the shoulder, one shook my hand. She said, you can teach mental illness. You can teach TBI, or traumatic brain injury. You have to keep presenting. You have to do it. You have a story deep inside of you that you're not laying out, that we know is there, but you're not letting us hear it.
Okay.
We need to hear it. You need to be on the news. You need to be in the newspaper. And most of all, most importantly, you need to write a book. I looked at her in shock, and I said, well, okay, I'll try. And it was 4 years later where I sat down and said, okay, let's do this. But it's, I spent 14 hours a day, 14 days in a row, taking 2 days off to crash, and then going back to the cycle again, doing all 10 permissions, doing the poems, the songs in it, doing the DSM-3, DSM-4, traumaticbraininjury.com, all this stuff, pulling all this equations into the organizing it and everything. And when I was done with it, I was lucky enough to find a professor at UMD who did English, and she slipped it into her laptop, and she looked at the chapters, and she said, did you organize these? I said, yeah, why? She said, they're perfect. I was like, wow, okay. So I have that gift of being able to teach. I have that gift of being able to write. My spelling's not great. My sentences aren't perfect, but I get the point now, and that's what matters. The presenting, I just sent an application in to Brain Injury Association of America, who seems very interested having me as a speaker for them, and I want to take it to the next level. So, and I do have to bring one person into this conversation since we're talking about all of this.
Right.
You probably know this person, Archie Davis. Spoke with him on Friday and asked if I could use him in this, and he said that'd be fine. He is my mentor. He helps me with my presentations. He helps me keep my head straight, keep focused. He's a great person. He's my mentor. He's almost like a father to me. He's a great, outstanding person. So
Right.
yes.
Now, do you think having mentors for anything really is really a key with artistry, even that you need someone to kind of help you along, maybe give you a little push and to kind of guide you?
Yeah, it does help you not drift away from what you're trying to go after. He told me, he said, well, you've got a gift. He said, I've heard you present. You do an excellent job. You know how to put the beef on it, put the details in it, scare people, pretty much, the shock and awe theory. But you do it in a very educated way.
Okay.
And so he told me, he said, choose one company and go with them and make the most of it. So.
All right. Was it extremely difficult for you to find a publisher for your book? I know you mentioned it kind of took quite a while to get the website permission and other permissions like that. And your mother also wrote a couple essays for these
Right.
chapters as well.
Finding a publishing company is very difficult because publishing companies like to use smoke screens. They don't
Okay.
like to tell you precisely how much it's going to cost. They like to give you a whole bunch of options to choose from with different price brackets, and then you go up from there.
Okay.
And the one thing I liked about Meyer Digital down in St. Louis, Missouri, was the fact that Meyer Digital said, okay, this is how much it's going to cost to do this size book, this many color pages, so forth, so on. This is how much it will cost for 300 books. You know, they stuck to their word. You know, there are no smoke screens. If there is a price change, they will talk to you about it and say, well, if you do this, it's going to go up another 100 or so, but you know, that's your call if you want to do that or not. It took probably 2 months to find a company that I really felt comfortable dealing with, working with, and someone who didn't look at me as just a paycheck.
Okay.
And that's what they do at Meyer Digital. They look at you like you're an individual. We've had a lot of back and forth. The cover is one of them. The cover is broken glass on a mirror.
It's quite colorful. You've got the red and the blue in there as well.
I used a spotlight up on a shelf, or turn the lights off in the room, and you know, these probably 1.5 by 1.5 inch pieces of window from a car window that was shattered, and then stood them upright on their edges, and then took a laser light and projected it off of one edge to get the effect. I did that on the front, I did that on the back. The cover's my design, the wording's my design, the font style is my design, the way it's laid out is my design. They did an excellent job with it. I'm very, very pleased with them. Had a couple invites to go down there and see them, but they're nice people.
All right. And now I don't want to give too much away in your book because I hope people will pick it up and things. Where can they get copies? They can get copies from you. Are you at Barnes & Noble or up on Kindle?
No, I'm not. I'm actually at Sweet Peas up in Two Harbors.
Okay.
It's a little craft shop. And I'm also at Animal Allies. And that's it.
Okay.
Unless you can get a hold of me, that's it. You have the web address of the book. If they want to go to the company, that's where they can go to find the book. All lowercase, www.miraboksmart.com / capital M lowercase y dash uppercase A. The rest is lowercase MBITION dash lowercase t lowercase o / capital S. The rest is lowercase URVIVE spacebar P spacebar 592 period HTML.
All right, wonderful. And now, if somebody is interested in having you do a presentation or something like that, how can they contact you?
That's a good question.
Email?
Yeah. If you're interested in buying a book from the author, or you're interested in a presentation, my business email address is ambition2survive@gmail.com. I check it twice a day, and I will get back to you. Always open to do presentations. I'm actually expanding my presentations in colleges. Going to provide, there we go, for disabilities and people with mental illness who are survivors in college.
Okay.
Because I know how it was like. I've been down that road, and it's not fun. So.
And now, what's coming up next for you? More presentations in the area? Where are you hoping to bring this book?
I'm looking at possibly going on the Oprah Winfrey Show.
Okay.
I sent a package to her last week. Had a book, had a DVD of my presentation in it, had the flyer, business card, business letter. I'm hoping that it'll get some attention to the book, because it's really not getting attention right now. So
Just wait. It will.
I know.
It will. Well, Brad, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your thoughts with us on your book and your ambition to survive and to get things done.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. You too.